There is a sacred stillness in the early morning that no other time of day can replicate. It is not the same silence you find late at night, because that silence is tired. It has seen too much. But the silence of the morning, it's untouched, fresh, pure like a blank page. It holds no stories, no expectations, just possibility. When you wake up early, before the noise begins, you are not just waking your body. You are waking your awareness. You are stepping into a space where the mind hasn't yet remembered its worries. The world hasn't told you who to be. The ego hasn't fastened its name tag to your chest yet. You are just presence, just being, and in that sacred gap between sleep and the waking world, there is a doorway. A space of deep inner stillness where something real is waiting. Most people miss this doorway. They sleep right past it. They trade it for 10 more minutes, for an alarm that screams instead of a silence that heals. But those who rise early, those who open their eyes before the rest of the world, they get something rare, a chance to meet life in its rawest form. No makeup, no roles, just presence, and this presence, it doesn't come through effort. It's not something you force. It's already there, but you can only notice it when everything else has quieted down. That's why the early morning is powerful. Not because it's filled with tasks, but because it's empty. Empty enough for you to remember what's true. Empty enough for you to hear the breath moving in and out without needing to control it. Empty enough to see that you are not your thoughts. You are the one who notices them. The morning doesn't demand anything from you. It doesn't ask for performance. It doesn't care about your to-do list. It's not trying to fix you. It simply offers space to be, space to return. And in this space, there is a great freedom, because for a few moments, you are not someone trying to become something. You are not someone trying to get somewhere. You are simply awake, and that in itself is enough. The birds are not in a hurry. The sun doesn't rise with anxiety. The sky doesn't need a schedule, and yet everything gets done. Nature moves in stillness, and that same stillness lives in you. But you must rise early enough to feel it. You must be there before the day distracts you, before your phone lights up, before your name starts echoing through texts and emails, because once that wave comes, it's easy to forget the silence. It's easy to drown in noise. That's why early risers speak differently. They walk differently. It's not pride. It's not superiority. It's because they've already met the part of themselves that isn't chasing. And once you've met that part, even for a moment, it changes how you carry the rest of the day. You don't move out of reaction anymore. You move from awareness. You don't speak just to fill the air. You speak because you have something real to say. You don't run toward everything. You know how to stand still. And the beauty of this presence is that it doesn't fade when you get busy. No, it stays with you like a quiet flame in the chest. Like an anchor, you could be in traffic, in conversation, in the middle of chaos, and still something in you is rooted. Not tight, not tense, rooted, because the day didn't begin with stress. It began with silence, with breath, with truth. Waking up early is not just about productivity. That's a shallow benefit. It's not about how many things you can check off your list. It's about who you are before the list even appears. It's about touching the eternal before the temporary takes over. It's about remembering that life is not just made up of days. It's made up of presence within those days. And the earlier you rise, the more of that presence you get to touch. The most important conversations happen in the silence of morning, conversations not with others, but with the self. with that part of you that's not trying to convince, not trying to defend, not trying to pretend, just aware. Just hear, and when you wake up early enough to hear that voice, the rest of the voices lose their power. The opinions, the projections, the noise. It doesn't shake you the same, because you've already heard something truer, something deeper, something that can't be shaken, and so the early morning becomes a kind of doorway, not a door to more doing, but a door to being. And each time you pass through it, you come out quieter, clearer, stronger, not in the way the world defines strength, but in the way truth reveals it. Calm, unshaken, deeply alive, there is a certain madness that begins the moment the world wakes up. A rush, a pull, 1,000 invisible hands reaching out to grab your attention, your energy, your peace. Notifications light up screens, people call your name, tasks whisper urgency before your feet even touch the floor. And without realizing it, you're not living your life. You're reacting to it. You're already behind, already being pulled. But something happens when you rise before all that begins. When you wake up early, really early, you escape that pull. You step outside of the current before it starts sweeping everyone away. You're not caught in the storm because you were already standing on the shore, watching it form. And in that space, in those quiet early moments, you get to remember something most people forget. You don't have to live in constant response. You don't have to let the world set your rhythm. Most people are already at war before breakfast with their thoughts, with their deadlines, with their image, with their own reflection in the mirror. But those who wake up early, those who rise before the noise, they move differently. They breathe differently. They know something. They've seen the world without its mask, without its noise, and they know that most of what looks urgent isn't. Most of what looks loud is empty. Most of what looks powerful is chasing shadows. Waking up early gives you time to feel your own rhythm before the world imposes one on you. You sit in silence, and for once, you hear your own breath instead of headlines. You hear your own voice instead of opinions. You get to ask real questions, not the ones others are screaming at you, but the quiet ones that live inside you. Who am I today? What matters? What is pulling me? And why? The early morning is like a clean slate. No one's expectations, no demands, just being, just stillness. And from that place, when you finally do step into the world, you're not entering as someone who is lost in the wave. You are the one who watched it rise. You saw it coming. You're not surprised. You're prepared, not with armor, but with awareness. That pull, the one that drags people into drama, into fear, into overthinking, it has less power over someone who has already faced the morning alone, who has already stood still and let the silence do its work. It's not that problems disappear. It's that they don't decide your mood anymore. It's not that people stop making noise. It's that you've already heard something deeper. This is why early mornings are sacred. They're not just about getting ahead. They're about getting away from the addiction to stimulation, from the constant reaction, from the heavy energy that most people carry into the day. You rise early not to do more, but to be more rooted, more present, more awake. Most people wake up and immediately step onto a treadmill they didn't choose. They check their phones, and instantly their minds belong to someone else. Their emotions are being programmed. Their thoughts aren't theirs anymore. But if you rise early and you resist the pull, even for 20 minutes, you remember what's yours. You remember what silence feels like. You remember what intention tastes like, and that memory becomes strength. You begin to realize you were never meant to be dragged around by the world. You were meant to move with grace through it. But you can't do that if you're always arriving late to yourself. You have to get there first, before the world claims you, before it calls your name in 1,000 directions. You rise early so you can listen inward, not outward. You rise early so your soul speaks first, not last, because if the world speaks first, you spend all day trying to find your center again. But if you speak first, the world has to meet you on your terms, and that changes everything. There's something different about a day that begins in stillness. It carries a different weight, a quieter strength, a deeper clarity. It's not about superstition or surface-level productivity hacks. It's about what happens inside you when you consistently choose to begin your day in reverence rather than rush. When the first thing you touch isn't a screen, but your own breath. When your first movement isn't to chase, but to listen. That choice, repeated each morning, begins to shape the entire architecture of your life. A sacred morning isn't about a rigid schedule. It's not about how many push-ups you do or how many goals you journal. It's about presence, about meeting the dawn with awareness, not with anxiety. It's the difference between being dragged into the day by force or walking into it like it's a temple. And when you walk into your morning like it's sacred, you start to see your entire life that way too. Because how you begin carries into everything. If your first act of the day is reaction emails, headlines, noise, then your nervous system is already in defense. You're bracing, you're guarding, you're preparing for battle. But if your first act is silence or gratitude or breath, then the armor doesn't go up. The heart opens instead. You become receptive instead of reactive, soft but not weak, aware, not afraid. Most people think they need to change their entire lives to feel peace, but it starts with 1 hour. 1 hour that belongs fully to you, 1 hour where the world can wait. You don't need to do 100 things. Just wake up before the noise and be there. Feel what it's like to sit with yourself while the sky is still soft. To hear the world waking up in whispers instead of chaos. To stretch your limbs slowly with intention instead of scrambling to beat the clock. That space, that quiet, becomes your root. And from that root, everything grows differently. Conversations aren't just noise anymore. You listen, you speak slower, you don't rush to win. You carry the calm from the morning into the chaos of the day, and people feel it. You don't have to announce it. It's in your eyes, it's in your pauses, it's in your tone. A sacred morning reminds you that you are not just a machine. You are not just here to tick boxes and chase numbers. You are a being, and beings need space. We need stillness. Not as a luxury, but as a necessity. The same way your body needs air, your soul needs quiet. And if you don't get it in the morning, you may not get it at all. The world will never stop asking more of you, but the morning asks for nothing. It only invites, it whispers. It says, come sit, come breathe, come remember. And when you answer that invitation, something inside you reorders itself. Priorities shift, clarity returns. You stop needing to prove so much because you already feel grounded. You stop needing to escape so much because you're no longer running. There's a sacredness to being awake while most of the world is asleep. Not because you're better, but because you're choosing something few people choose. Awareness over autopilot. Connection over consumption. Depth over distraction. And that choice echoes. It doesn't just touch your morning. It reshapes your values, your energy, your direction. You begin to treat your time differently because you've tasted what undisturbed time feels like. You begin to treat yourself differently because you've seen who you are beneath the rush. You begin to treat others differently because you're no longer projecting your stress onto them. Sacred mornings soften the sharp edges. They dissolve the inner noise, and in that silence, life becomes clear again. No one claps for you at 5 a.m. There's no applause, no spotlight, no congratulations. No one is watching. No one is cheering you on. And that's exactly why it matters. Because in a world obsessed with validation, the decision to rise while others sleep is a quiet declaration of self-leadership. It says, I don't need the world to see me before I move. I don't need permission to begin. I begin because I choose to. Waking up early is not about chasing the world. It's about meeting yourself before the world gets a chance to distract you. It's not even about how much you get done in those early hours. It's about who you become when you consistently show up without needing anyone else to push you. That version of you, the one who moves in silence, the one who chooses discipline without reward, that version is powerful. That version cannot be bought, cannot be influenced, cannot be shaken. Most people wait for life to give them direction. They wait for motivation to arrive like a guest. They wait for someone to tell them who they are. But inner leaders don't wait. They wake up early, not because it's easy, not because they always feel like it, but because they've realized the difference between what's comfortable and what's true. Comfort will keep you sleeping. Truth will get you out of bed. In the early morning, you are alone with your choices. You don't have to impress anyone. You don't have to explain anything. There's no crowd. Just you, the silence, and the question, who am I when no one is watching? That question burns quietly in the darkness. It strips away the ego. It humbles you, but it also strengthens you. Because the answer doesn't come through thought. It comes through action. You rise, you move, you breathe. You lead yourself. Leadership is not always loud. Sometimes it looks like tying your shoes while it's still dark. Sometimes it looks like sitting in meditation before the world wakes up. Sometimes it looks like journaling through your resistance. No headlines, no announcements, just commitment. That's what makes early mornings sacred, not just for peace, but for power. Because when you do something difficult for the sake of your own evolution without external reward, you become a force. Quiet but unshakable, waking up early teaches you to trust yourself. You no longer rely on the chaos of the day to wake you up. You no longer wait for the pain to push you. You stop running on emergencies and start moving from intention. It's not that you become better than others, it's that you become more you, more in tune, more focused, more aligned with the version of yourself that doesn't shrink from responsibility, but embraces it. That's why early rising is not just a habit, it's a signal to the deeper part of you that says, I am here, I am listening, I am ready. Ready not just to work, but to be present in your own life. Ready not just to succeed, but to lead yourself with honesty, with awareness, with care. And that kind of leadership, internal, disciplined, invisible to most, is the foundation of every meaningful change you will ever make. When you lead yourself in the morning, you're not trying to control everything. You're simply choosing not to be controlled. You're choosing clarity over confusion, stillness over rush, intention over impulse. And these choices, though small and often unseen, begin to shape a different reality. One where you don't just follow what the world throws at you. You set the tone. You hold the posture. You walk into your day not as someone reacting, but as someone leading. First yourself, then everything else. Life today moves fast, faster than ever. Information floods your mind before you even finish your first sip of water. Screens blink with headlines, opinions, expectations, and noise. By midday, most people are already drained, not because they did too much, but because they never paused long enough to anchor themselves. They were swept up in a current before they even realized they were in the river. And the world, without asking, keeps taking. It takes your attention, your focus, your calm, your clarity. It takes, and it rarely gives back. But the morning, when chosen intentionally, gives you back what the world steals. In the early hours, before the world starts shouting, there's a return, a remembering. You remember your breath. You remember your body. You remember your presence. And you remember that beneath all the layers, the roles, the plans, the expectations, you are here. Awake, alive, not just a participant in life, but a witness to it. That remembering is a gift, but it's not handed to you. You have to wake up for it. You have to be there to receive it. Most people trade this moment away for just a little more sleep, a little more comfort, not realizing they are giving up the most valuable part of their day, the part that could restore them. Because once the world begins to move, it rarely pauses for you. It expects your availability. It asks for your energy. It wants your reaction. But the morning asks for none of that. It waits quietly, gently, patiently. It offers, and what it offers is real time without pressure, space without demand, movement without rush. In those quiet minutes, you reclaim things that don't survive well during the noise. Your gratitude, which gets buried beneath comparison. Your stillness, which gets lost in deadlines. Your clarity, which gets drowned in opinions. And your joy, not the loud kind, but the soft, grounded kind that doesn't need a reason to exist. You find all of it again in the morning, if you're willing to meet yourself there. There's a reason the most peaceful people you'll ever meet have strong morning rituals. They don't do it for appearance. They do it because they've seen what the day does when you enter it empty. They've felt the difference between reacting from exhaustion and responding from fullness. They don't just wake up early, they return early. They return to breathe, to simplicity, to presence. And that return makes them unshakable. You can't always control what happens in your day. You can't control who texts you, what problem arises, what challenge knocks at your door, but you can control how you start. You can choose whether the first thing you consume is chaos or calm. You can choose whether you begin by reaching outward or inward. You can choose whether the day dictates your pace or whether you step into it already rooted. The world will keep asking for more. More attention, more output, more movement, but the morning doesn't ask, it gives. And the more you receive from it, the more you have to give back to the world, not from depletion, but from abundance. You don't have to rush to find meaning. It's already there, in the sunrise, in the breath, in the quiet stretch of your hands as they rise from the blanket. You don't need to prove anything. You're not behind. You're just here. And that's the miracle. When you claim the morning, you are not escaping life. You are stepping deeper into it. You are tuning yourself before the noise arrives. You are lighting a candle in the dark, not because the dark is wrong, but because you've remembered you are the light. You are not waking up just to check boxes. You are waking up to remember yourself, and that memory is sacred. Because once you remember, the world can no longer steal what you've reclaimed. Waking up early is not just about time. It's about reclaiming yourself. In those first sacred moments of the day, before the noise rises, before the world starts asking things from you, there is a doorway back to stillness, a doorway back to clarity, a doorway back to you. When you rise before the world, you move with it instead of against it. You no longer rush to catch up, you lead. You set the tone not just for your day, but for your life. Each morning becomes an act of quiet rebellion against the chaos, a decision to live routine instead of rushed, focused instead of fragmented, awake instead of distracted, because what you do in the silence of the morning echoes through every conversation, every decision, every breath that follows. You're no longer being pulled, you're walking in the direction you've chosen, with calm steps and a clear heart. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. Not every morning will feel easy, but every morning is an invitation. And when you accept it, even once you'll feel it, the power, the peace, the steady flame that says, I am here. I am not lost. I am ready. So rise not just for productivity, but for presence. Rise not just to get ahead, but to return home to yourself. Because those who meet the morning with awareness don't just have better days, they live deeper lives.